Welcome in to Words with Wallace. I'm your host, Nick Wallace, coming at you. It's Monday, May 12th. Another sad podcast. I really hate to be stringing these together like that, but that is the situation we're in. Horrible Celtics loss, falling down 3-1 to the New York Knicks. And the headliner here is some terrible Jason Tatum injury news that, frankly, we don't have a real update on. They're saying it's his ankle. He hurt it with 3 minutes left in the game, but frankly, looked like a non-contact injury. Felt about as bad as it can get as far as the stakes, not just for this series, but moving forward with the franchise player. This sucks, man. It really sucks. For those watching on YouTube, you might see my cat Cheeto. He's in full emotional support pet mode right now. I need him significantly, so he is here. He knew, did not summon him, but that's just the type of guy that Cheeto is, so hopefully we don't mind the new guest co-host on a podcast like this. But yeah, man, it's pretty terrible. I'd love to sit here and jump on and encourage any sort of Celtics fans that are listening to this, but to be totally honest with you, and I know this is pretty reactionary here, I think we're basically cooked at this point in time. Being down 3-1 in any situation, the odds definitely are not in your favor, but I wouldn't rule this Celtics team out. But I would say that the Jason Tatum injury news is probably the icing on the cake for this season, to be totally honest with you. I don't see a world where, based on the limited information that's available to me, that Jason Tatum doesn't miss at least 1 to 2 more games, and that is, again, the best case scenario. But I am expecting at this point in time for him to at least be out for the remainder of this series against the New York Knicks, and I don't think we're going to get another series after that. It's really unfortunate, and I know there's a bunch of Knicks fans, probably rightfully so, enjoying this win, as long as they're not doing so at the expense of Jason Tatum. I guess that's where I'd have a problem with that. I'm sure it's not hard to find. I intentionally have not been on Twitter after the game. I should mention Minnesota Golden State is taking place right now. Frankly, I don't care. I don't care that much. I'm pretty bummed with my Celtics right about now. And frankly, I don't think watching the Golden State Warriors without Steph Curry is going to make me feel better. So that's where we're at right about now. And I did just want to get back to my point saying that this Tatum injury news sucks. It's horrible. It's a player at the peak of his powers suffering a non-contact, lower leg injury. Again, it's listed as an ankle. I am praying it is only an ankle injury, but realistically, it was non-contact. Again, I don't want to jinx anything here, but it looked like it could be a potential Achilles issue, right? It looked like a similar stumble to what happened with Damian Lillard just a couple weeks ago, which honestly is just a complete worst case scenario for any basketball player, really any athlete, as far as an Achilles injury. So we are very much just praying that that's not the case. But I don't want that to deflect from the fact that this game was probably over when Jason Tatum got hurt, right? There was 3 minutes left in the game. The Knicks were up by 7 at that point in time. They had all the momentum. Tatum actually got hurt on a turnover that basically became a wide open fast break dunk for OG Anunoby, sending the lead to 9 points. So realistically, the Celtics were not coming back in that game. So if the Tatum injury excuse is one you're reaching for as a Celtics fan, I don't think you can really use it for the sake of tonight's game. And it's such a big bummer focusing on the game itself because Tatum was masterful in this game. 42 points, was the engine on offense all night long for the Celtics. He did take 28 shots to get there, but he was hot from 3. Outside of one pretty rough stretch in the third quarter there, he was really locked in. And sure, you could make the argument that out of the 28 shots that he took, do you need 16 of those to be 3 balls? I don't know about that. That's probably, a couple too many, especially again in that third quarter where we watched a big lead slip away. But he was fantastic on both ends of the court, and this was easily his best game of the playoffs so far, and it's just such a bummer to see him get hurt in one where he was really shining. Other notable Celtics, Derek White was unbelievable. I think he drilled his first 4 shots of the game. He finished the game with 23 points. Jalen had some nice moments, but besides that, no one else really chipped in. I did like the Peyton Pritchard minutes. I think he got a couple buckets super late in the game that kind of padded his stats, but only 5 points from Al, only 4 points from Drew Holiday. 7 points for Kristaps Porzingis. We'll talk about him in a second here. But realistically, there just weren't that many shots for those guys to go around. Like, the ball wasn't moving the way it normally does. I guess that was kind of the consequence of Tatum initiating everything and getting to his jump shot a lot easier than what he had done in previous games. So I'm not super upset with Al Horford or Drew Holiday right now. Al only took 2 shots, I'm noticing now. So again, it was really all on Tatum. And frankly, it should have been enough offense to win the game. This was really the only game in the entire series where both offenses were proficient for the better part of 48 minutes. This was kind of the worst case scenario for the Celtics in that this was the game that the Knicks were probably supposed to win, right? If we shift the focus over to them, Brunson was unbelievable in this one. He had 39 points himself. Bridges looked like a baby Kevin Durant out there, especially during the second half. His first half, second half splits this series must be stupid to look at with how good he was in the second half and how many times he got to that little fall away mid-range jumper. But, with those two guys firing and Towns still found a way to get his 23 points despite the fact he wasn't having it going from beyond the arc. And OG Anunoby was making his threes, right? He hit 4 of them in this game. He was good for 20 points. So this was like an all-around offensive effort from the Knicks that we just hadn't seen, right? Like the Knicks were a great offensive team all year long. And during the first couple games, they were able to win because, yes, they made a ridiculous, second half comeback in the first 2 games of the series. But they really won with defense, right? The Celtics offense falling apart when it mattered the most was how the Knicks kind of lucked into those first 2 wins. But this game outright, like the Knicks outplayed the Celtics. It sucks to say, but that was just kind of the case. This was the game that the Knicks were supposed to win. That's why I had Celtics in 5 for a reason, right? I thought the Knicks would outplay the Celtics in at least one of these games, and it finally came in game 4. But unfortunately, Celtics have already made their bed by choking away the first 2 games of the series that we talked about in my last podcast. So it is really just a bummer. Again, the Knicks are very hard to beat when everybody's locked in like that. Like Brunson, obviously everything runs through him. But having Bridges be that second creator and everybody else just kind of knocks down their open shots when it's available, I think that was the main reason that the Knicks won the game, as well as the rebounding effort, right? They actually out-rebounded the Celtics by 12 in this game, which I know doesn't sound like a lot, but in a game that's close, especially in the playoffs, that can definitely be enough to swing the game. And obviously a lot of those boards coming on the offensive glass. I mean, Mitchell Robinson, that guy took a lot of shit in the media, and probably rightfully so, the past couple games with his terrible free throw shooting on full display in game 3, but he had 5 offensive rebounds himself. Towns had 3, Josh Hart had his usual 2, and there was 13 offensive rebounds in comparison to the Celtics 7. I think that if you're pointing at the blame for that, right, it's really just because Kristaps isn't himself. He was pretty terrible. He was really the only Celtic that I was truly disappointed in throughout this game. I mean, he just smoked a layup during a crucial spot in the third quarter. He also missed 2 big free throws. There was also one spot where the Knicks were gaining momentum where Derek White took a corner 3, and for some reason, like, the only people under the hoop were Kristaps Porzingis and Bridges, and for whatever reason, Kristaps just, like, misread where the ball was going to go and, like, jumped and threw himself out of position for an easy offensive rebound and putback, and instead the ball just went right to Bridges, right where Kristaps was standing. Like, I don't know why he's jumping at that when there's nobody else on the court that can hang with him vertically. Really, just mentally, he looked out of it. Physically, he didn't look like himself either. I mean, it's just not the Kristaps that we're used to seeing, and, his injury has a real effect on this series. Not that it should be the reason that the Celtics lost, because they should be good enough to beat the Knicks anyway, but it is just worth noting that, whatever decision there is to be made about Kristaps Porzingis in the offseason, this series is not doing him any favors at increasing the likelihood that he's going to be a Boston Celtic next year. So it's a bummer. I did just check Twitter again. Unfortunately, no news on Jason Tatum's injury, so we still don't know, and really that's all anyone cares about the Celtics is going to be thinking about for the next day or so. But I guess since we don't have any more information, just to put a bow on it, I think it's really unlikely that the Celtics are able to pull this out. I have no reservations about the Celtics being the better team against the Knicks. When they went up 7 in the fourth quarter, Mike Breen announced that was the largest Knicks lead of the series, which tells you everything you need to know. Every single game, the Celtics have been up by at least 14 points in the second half. It was at least 20 points during the first 3, and then today the Celtics got up by as much as 14. That was really early in the third quarter. If we're asking about that run and what happened for the Celtics to blow that 14-point lead, which they did, I mean, it was really just the third quarter that was a nightmare, right? Because they entered the fourth quarter down 5 points at that point. But it was really Brunson getting hot, making some really tough shots. A couple of the times we lost him on a 3. We also had like a questionable flagrant foul on Jaylen Brown, which sent him to the line for another easy 3 shots. So we definitely made some mistakes. But for the most part, after a couple slip-ups early in that quarter, I would say that the Celtics did what they did all series long and played pretty good defense. The difference was that Mikal Bridges and Jalen Brunson were making some really tough shots. And one time, Brunson got all the way to the hoop. Tatum had to help. Left OG wide open for three. He drilled it. Those were just the type of plays that the Knicks were making. Meanwhile, the Celtics got a little three happy. There was only like one Jaylen Brown layup that broke up a lot of jump shot attempts for the Celtics, and the ball just went the next way in that third quarter, and then that put the Celtics in a tough spot where, I think it was tied with like 6 minutes left, but again, Brunson made a couple buckets, McCall had a bucket, and next thing you know, we're down 7. Tatum gets hurt, and that's game. And so, again, this was one where the Knicks outplayed us. They absolutely deserved to win tonight. They didn't deserve to win any of the first 3, but they stole 2 of those games. And now the Celtics are in a situation where they're down 3-1. And again, especially with Tatum's health up in the air, like, sure, can we get the Jaylen Brown game 2 in Orlando 30-something point performance and we win? Like, absolutely. I mean, this team definitely has the ability to make up for Tatum on the offensive end of the court. As crazy as it sounds, like, with how good Pritchard has been the past couple games, I've been encouraged by him. Like, this team has a lot of different ways to score the ball. That's not a secret, especially if the team as a whole is hitting the outside shots. Can we beat the Knicks a couple times? Sure. But I think where we're really going to miss Tatum is what he brings to the team on defense, the switchability, the rebounding. Again, like, that was a huge issue enough, including Jason Tatum's 8 boards tonight. Who knows what it's going to look like next game if he's not out there. I just find it hard to believe that the Celtics are going to be able to keep the Knicks in check on the defensive end of the court if Tatum's not out there. And I just really have no faith that the Celtics are going to be able to pull this off without him. And even if they do, like, it's going to be a tough matchup in either Indiana or Cleveland waiting for them. Again, I just am not super optimistic on Tatum's injury. So I think the reality is that it's probably over for this season as Celtics fans. I could sound really dumb saying this. That's the risky run, being reactionary and recording a podcast right after one game ends. But that's the kind of situation that I'm in right now. So that's kind of where we're at with the Celtics. And frankly, we're just praying that this injury that Jason Tatum suffered is something that would only affect him for this season. Again, I mentioned it earlier in the show. The injury diagnosis goes a little bit differently. If it is something more severe, there's a real chance it could affect his availability for next season, and it could leave a lot of tough decisions for this new ownership group who is presumably taking the reins this summer. Allegedly, Wick is supposed to stay in control of the team. I just don't really believe that. But it's just in the realm of possibilities that this run for the Boston Celtics is over. That's just the reality of the situation that we're in right now. That's how quickly it changes in the NBA. It's really tough. Even though you have 2 young studs that we're building around, and beyond that, you're relying on a couple older guys, and Al and Drew. You're relying on a guy that might as well be 50 years old in Porzingis, his durability concerns, and then you have all the second apron stuff that just makes it nearly impossible to maintain a championship core. Yeah, this is really as grim as it can get. I mean, if the loss wasn't bad enough, the Tatum injury is 10 times worse than even the situation against the Knicks, given the Celtics' outlook for next season being cloudy as well. So don't mean to be too negative. That's just all the information that we have, and I just want to be very honest that really this game could not have gone any worse for the Boston Celtics. Moving over to the other side of the Eastern Conference bracket, I do want to touch on these series real quick. Frankly, I'm not super locked in on them like I would be. I'm pretty bummed about the C's, obviously, and frankly just don't care as much about the playoffs as I did a couple hours ago. But there is a really awesome series taking place on the other side of the Eastern Conference between the Cavaliers and the Indiana Pacers. And the Pacers are going to be in a spot where they can close out the Cavs tomorrow. With that game being in Cleveland, I don't necessarily expect to have that happen, but you really can't guarantee anything with how awful Game 4 was for the Cleveland Cavaliers. I mean, if you missed it, I was actually watching a show with Jess. I've been dominating the TV so much during the rounds of the playoffs. I was like, yeah, I can afford to miss like the first 20 or so minutes of the game last night. And by the time I flicked it on, like, the Cavs were literally down by 40 points. It was insane. It was just an absolute ass whooping. Felt like Cleveland had some momentum because they finally got all their guys back. And while, albeit those guys didn't necessarily look like themselves in Game 3, but it was enough to win with Donovan Mitchell still being super locked in. And then Game 4 was just an all-time ass whooping. I mean, it rivaled Game 1 of the Memphis OKC series, if you guys missed it. So, yeah, really not many notes on that. It wasn't like the heroics of one guy in the Pacers. I mean, Halliburton didn't even have a great game as far as the box score goes, but like everybody could not miss for Indiana. And I just think Indiana being the healthier team, knowing that they at least have one more game in Indiana where they're going to have an opportunity to close them out, I find it hard to believe that the Cavs, in this current state that they're in, are going to be able to win 3 straight games against the Indiana Pacers. I don't think it's going to happen. And so I'm just going to be boring here and predict that the Pacers are able to advance over the Cleveland Cavaliers, setting up a potential Knicks-Pacers Eastern Conference Finals. I'm not going to give you too much analysis on that because there will be time in future podcasts to break that down, but that's where we're headed quickly. And so I really don't have much to say else on that series besides if you want me to be bitter here for a second, what I would tell you to do, go to your sports book of choosing and then just maybe take out a loan before that so you have a little bit more cash to play with and just absolutely hammer the NBA champion coming out of the Western Conference. That is what I would do. I don't care. You can pick your favorite team in the West, whether it be OKC or Denver, Minnesota, shit, even Warriors. You could probably get some pretty crazy odds on them right about now as they're in the middle of their game with the Wolves. Any of those teams, I mean, take them, but just make sure that you have a little bit of money on the champion in the NBA coming out of the Western Conference. I'm sure it's pretty bad odds for that right now, but what I'm telling you right now is none of these teams in the East besides Boston have a fucking chance to win the championship. It's not happening. I don't care. Now, granted, anything can happen once you get to the NBA Finals. Like, there will be an Eastern Conference team that is there. That much we know. So, I mean, there could be some crazy injury luck that breaks their way. But with the exception of that, I just do not find it possible that whatever team is able to make it through this gauntlet of the Western Conference loses to either the Knicks or likely the Pacers. It's not happening. Those teams are too flawed. I don't believe in them, especially on the defensive end of the court. I'm not buying what they're selling. So yeah, go to the bank, take out a loan. NBA champion coming out of the Western Conference this year. You heard it here first. So other series in the Western Conference, Nuggets and OKC. It's easily been the best series so far. It's knotted up at 2-2, and I think there was a real gut check win for the Oklahoma City Thunder yesterday. This game was so gross to watch. I think the Nuggets finished the first quarter with like 8 points, and they were only down by like 8 points because it was just that sloppy of a game. The game was in Denver, and the Nuggets were able to rally in the second half after really struggling to put the ball in the hoop in the first half. And frankly, when the Nuggets are rolling like that, the home crowd is going. Given the experience of Denver, I really wasn't expecting OKC to be able to make a comeback, but they did just that. They basically put a lid on the basket. They were able to flip the script pretty quickly and ended up eking out a relatively comfortable win on the road in Denver. And that definitely would have been the series, right? Like similar to the other two series we just talked about. If Denver was able to find a way to go up 3-1 heading back to OKC, I would have felt very strongly right about now that Denver would be the ones to win this series. But right now it's obviously a coin flip, right? It's tied 2-2. I'm still going to stick with Denver because role players, I think Denver's are actually playing a little bit better than OKC's right about now. Now there's more options, there's more guys that Coach Dagnall has to run through before he gets to the end of the bench there, unlike Adelman over in Denver there's not that many options and strategies for the Nuggets to deploy, but Aaron Gordon at this point might be having a better playoffs relative to expectation than anybody else in the NBA. I mean, he's really been that good. Obviously, the clutch moments in game one, putback dunk against the Clippers in round one. I mean, he has those clutch moments, and also the fact that he's just like a knockdown, like 45% three-point shooter, incredible defender. He's been amazing. Michael Porter Jr., it really is just night to night. He was awful yesterday. The game before that, he was great. He seems to be really struggling with that shoulder injury. But Christian Brown, for the most part, has been fantastic. Jamal Murray, again, it just depends on what night you catch him. But I think given what he's up against with that OKC defense, he looks really good right about now. So that series can go either way. But I do think ultimately the winner of the OKC Denver series, whoever that may be, is who I'm going to pick to win the NBA Finals, really, no matter what happens from here on out. So I pay really close attention because we're in for a great series. I'm going to stick with Nuggets in 7. But realistically, Jokic does have to play better. I do think this is very much a pro Jokic pod, right? And the standard that I hold him to as the guy I think is like the best player in the world. That's why I can't seem to quit Denver. But it is just worth noting, like he's struggled a lot. Like in this series against OKC, I think on the series, he's only shooting like 39% from the field, which for him is like unheard of. You know, yesterday he was 7 of 22. Like the jumper doesn't look reliable. Even his touch, like around the rim, like those insane, like, you know, floaters and like mid-range, like baby hook type shots that he seems to have just incredible touch on. Like they never even hit the rim. Even that's like a little bit off. And it could just be fatigue. It could be just, you know, going every other night against just a gauntlet of defenses, right? You have to go through Zubac in round 1, the guy that defends him better than anybody else in the NBA. And then you have like Isaiah Hartenstein bodying him up and Chet Holmgren waiting in the wings as that help defender. Like those two are always on the court when Jokic seems to be on the court. So yeah, man, it's a really tall task for Jokic. But if you're going to be the best player in the world, like I expect you to be better. I think if he has even an average Jokic game for his standards yesterday, you know, Denver's up 3-1 right about now. And they're feeling really good about their chances, not just to win this series, but to win the chip. And so I'm just paying really close attention to it. I do think Jokic will have more performances similar to his game one against the Thunder, but that's one thing to watch. I got to call it when I see it. And I know that, 27, 13, and 3 and 4 steals is not normally what you would consider a bad game, but I'm telling you, if you watched it, that's about as bad of a Jokic game as you're going to get. Last series we're going to talk about real quick just because it is going on right now. It looks like at this time Minnesota's up by 12 on Golden State. So unless something crazy happens, I really do think that it's probably GG's for the Golden State Warriors as well. Again, it is too early to say. I could sound like a dumbass here, but realistically, the game that Golden State could have won was game 3 at home without Steph Curry. If they found a way to pull out that game like it looked like they were going to for the better part of 3 quarters, and it basically been announced that Steph is probably going to come back game 6 at this point if it gets to that point. And so really all Golden State had to do was win one more game without Steph Curry and get it to 2 wins. That way you're guaranteed to get back to game 6, because let's say that's the situation. It's 3-2, but Steph Curry's back in the fold in front of his home floor in Golden State. Like, I'm chalking that up as a win no matter what. And then you get to a game 7 where, again, you're assuming Steph Curry's pretty close to full health at that point in time. Like, I'm just going to take the team with more experience, but I just don't think it's going to get to the opportunity where we're even seeing Steph Curry on the basketball court again, unless they bump up his recovery to come back game 5. Because I think Minnesota is just a way more talented team, and I know that they're up and down, and like we saw game 1 from that team, but ultimately, like, they just have too many guys that they can throw at Golden State. They have too many athletes. Anthony Edwards is too good. Hands down, have the best player in the series. That might not have been the case if Steph was healthy, and I think it's just going to be that simple, where Minnesota should be cruising to a Western Conference Finals against either Denver or OKC. So that's really all I got on playoff talk. I do think the games have been a little bit up and down. It's either been like an incredible game like what we saw earlier, the Celtics and the Knicks, where it's super back and forth, or we have blowouts like what we saw yesterday with Indiana and Cleveland. But in general, I don't know how anybody can hate watching the NBA right now. Even though as I'm the ultimate kick in the nuts coming off that Celtics game, I still love watching the NBA. I don't know how you can possibly question the product or the brand of basketball that we're witnessing, the talent on the court. This has been a really special round 2. And frankly, if you're a team that didn't have a team in the playoffs at all, so you're just like watching these games carefree, or maybe you lost round 1, but you're at peace with it, like, you're really enjoying the second round, because every game there's something to enjoy. As a casual fan, I think it's even more fun watching the games without having that rooting interest. So before we get out of here, we got to talk about the lottery. Today is sneaky one of the biggest days of the entire year for the NBA. I always forget that they do the lottery just like randomly in the middle of round 2. And as a spoiled Celtics fan the past several years, I never really think about the lottery as a fan. I never have much rooting interest, and it honestly just kind of sneaks up on me because I'll be watching my team in the playoffs, and then we have this weird drawing and we're at the fate of these ping pong balls, and it is definitely a pretty entertaining TV product. I wish they could find a way to spruce it up a little bit more. I wish they could actually pull out the ping pong balls like on screen to add a little bit more dramatic effect. But needless to say, the results of tonight's lottery did not disappoint. It's one of the craziest lotteries that I can possibly remember. And since you guys already know this by the time you're hearing this podcast, it starts with the Dallas Mavericks landing the number 1 overall pick. As I'm sitting here in the ashes of my Celtics season, most likely a new hope has been born, and that is the Dallas Mavericks after their abysmal season, possibly the worst in NBA history relative to their expectations. They were blessed, or maybe they were gifted, the number 1 overall pick. That's really for you guys to decide. So let's break down how it went and go through the order from 14 to 1 too, because it's not just the Mavs getting insanely lucky with this one. It's really the theme of this lottery was the rich get richer, right? I would say the teams that have secured the top 3 picks in the draft have a real chance to immediately be competitive. It wasn't the teams that were really grinding it out and really leaning into the tank. Those were not the teams that were rewarded tonight. So at the number 14 overall pick, this went to the Spurs. I believe this was from the Atlanta Hawks in the trade with DeJounte Murray. One of those first round picks cashed out, and it ended up being basically the worst it could have been at pick number 14. At 13, the Atlanta Hawks. I don't exactly know how the Hawks got this pick, if their first round pick this year went to the Spurs, like we just said, at 14. But needless to say, not that impactful that the Hawks are at 13. The Bulls, they didn't luck out. They're at 12. 11, the Portland Trailblazers. 10, the Houston Rockets, another really competitive team getting richer. I'm assuming that pick originally belonged to the Phoenix Suns, but we keep it moving here. Number 9, the Toronto Raptors. Number 8, the Brooklyn Nets. Number 7, the New Orleans Pelicans. Number 6, the Washington Wizards. Number 5, the Utah Jazz. And number 4, the Charlotte Hornets. And that run right there, going from Toronto at 9 all the way up to Charlotte at 4. Again, Raptors, Nets, Pelicans, Wizards, Jazz, Hornets. Like, those were all the true shitters, right? The true bottom barrel teams. Those were all the ones right there that really did their best to earn the number one overall pick. I believe those were all outright first round picks that belonged to those teams, right? That they weren't products of trades or anything like that. So those teams in particular really got shafted all the way from 9 to 4. All of those teams had a real shot at Cooper at number one. That didn't go the way that they hoped. And then we get to the top three, where again, things get really interesting. The Sixers at number three. I mean, this one makes me sick. I mean, they were definitely the number one team I did not want to see get Cooper flag. I just felt like they did not deserve it. I mean, they made all these big swings in the offseason, potentially a contending team for a championship, especially being in the Eastern Conference. And, meanwhile, Embiid is hurt. They lie about his injury. They give us the wrong information all season long, and then he barely plays. Paul George, that signing is a complete disaster. Tyrese Maxey gets hurt. Jared McCain, their only bright spot of the season, he gets hurt. And they end up falling ass backwards into a massive tanking season. I mean, if you look at the Sixers that beat my Celtics on Christmas Day, and then you look at the roster that they were rolling out in like March and April, it's not even recognizable. There might not be one singular player that was actually getting minutes for both of those versions of the same team. So I just felt like, when we're talking about the scale of which teams were most ethical, right? Which teams deserved to have a top pick in this draft, I would put the Sixers really low on that list. But it worked out really well for them, because if they fell out outside of the top 7, that pick was going to get gobbled up by OKC, which I didn't want to see that either, but I did think that would be more deserving for what the Sixers have gone through during the past year. But needless to say, the Sixers get the 3rd overall pick in the draft. They do have a competitive team in place. I have no idea the health of Joel Embiid, so that's really where any potential conversation with the Sixers starts and ends for next year. But there's definitely some guys that you can get at the 3 spot in the draft that you can plug in, around the core of Maxey and McCain and Paul George and Joel Embiid. And you can get some guys there that can immediately step in and contribute. And that probably wouldn't have been the case if they were lower on in the lottery. So the Sixers are big winners on the night. Number 2, the San Antonio Spurs. I mean, this one is crazy. The Spurs have had plenty of insane draft lottery luck over the years, and that continues to be the case. Obviously, really sad. We should note as well, I probably forgot to mention this in my last podcast, that Greg Popovich did step down from coaching. He's now moving up into the front office, where he's going to be president of basketball operations. He's just had too many health issues over the past year or so. So it's a really sad situation. I'm sure he'd love to still be coaching right now, but I'm glad he has a role in the front office. And whatever good fortune comes from that move, and Pop moving on to the next chapter of his career, well, he can be very happy to have a big decision to make at the 2nd overall pick. And again, they have a great core in place with Wemby, De'Aaron Fox, Stephon Castle. I mean, the guy that they're going to be able to plug in at 2 there is going to be massive for a Spurs team. And maybe they even look to trade the pick with how competitive the Spurs can be if they look to go all in on Victor Wembanyama right now. And then, of course, you have the Mavericks snagging the 1st overall pick. So I probably buried the lead here too much when it comes to this lottery talk, but whatever. I mean, everyone and their mother is just out here saying that it's fixed, right? And if you need me to spell it out for you, there was real discourse, like we talked about on this podcast back in December, about the decline in the NBA ratings and how the product early on in the season, people weren't super thrilled with it. And again, depending on where you looked, ratings were down for the most part. And then if you're a conspiracy theorist, you would put on that conspiracy hat and you'd say, well, what did the league do before the trade deadline to shake it up? Well, maybe Adam Silver put in a call to Nico Harrison, was like, hey, if you trade your franchise player that just dragged your team to the NBA Finals, if you happen to trade him to the biggest franchise that we have in the NBA right now, that would probably boost the ratings quite a bit, because the Lakers have a massive fan base and would give people something to talk about. And in return, I'll make sure that you have some good luck in the lottery, right? In theory, that's how that transaction between Commissioner Adam Silver and GM of the Mavericks, Nico Harrison, how that would have played out. And so that's what people are saying right now, that it was fixed for the Mavericks. I definitely don't believe that. It just kind of depends to what extent, right? Like, obviously you can't have planned all that out from day one. Like, hey, if you give up Luka, we'll repay you by getting you Cooper flag. I think there were too many moving parts and pretty hard to predict, like the Kyrie injuries and the second Anthony Davis injury and stuff like that, because realistically, the Mavericks should have never been here, right? They should have been a playoff team. It took a lot of bad fortune that came after the disastrous trade for the Mavericks to even get to this point. Like, even the Luka trade in a vacuum does not put the Mavericks in the situation to be outside of the playoffs. It took those other injuries as well. So I don't think that's exactly how it happened from start to finish. But if you are telling me, like, hey, out of the 4 teams at the top, I do think the most entertaining and the best for league ratings and league discussions of all that, of the teams that were there in the top 4, it was definitely the Dallas Mavericks. that was the best case scenario from a content perspective and from a marketing perspective. So if you want to tell me that the fix was in for the Mavericks once they snuck into the top four, I'll hear you out. All that to be said, it's a massive win for the Dallas Mavericks, and I'm very happy for their fans, right? I would say that their fans deserve something good to happen to them. It's been a nightmare. You bring up anything about the NBA, basketball, really anything to a real Mavericks fan, they look like they want to start crying because they think about Luka, they think about how that iteration of the team is over with and their future is cloudy and all that stuff. Well, now you have a new hope, and that new hope is Cooper Flag. I'm not going to do like a full breakdown right now, but I wouldn't say like quite a generational prospect by any means. Like that's reserved for guys like Wemby and Zion and LeBron and stuff like that. But I'd say that what Cooper has is really desirable, right? He's clearly a prize at the top of the lottery. It'd be really shocking if it's anyone but Cooper at number one. I think that'd be a great way for Nico Harrison to keep up his legacy, as if he just takes somebody else besides Cooper Flag at the first overall pick. The superpower of Cooper is that he's going to be able to fit into whatever team drafts him. He can immediately step in and be an elite defender for a Mavericks team, play the wing position, hold down the front court next to Anthony Davis, right? I mean, realistically, they're going to probably start him at the 3, Anthony Davis at the 4, one of the bigs at the 5, so maybe this pushes like somebody like PJ Washington to the bench or whatever, but he's going to plug in really nicely for that Mavericks team. And Nico does love defense, as he's well documented over the past couple of months, and Cooper Flag is definitely an elite defensive prospect. So it's great news, again, for the Mavericks fans themselves. They deserve this. They have a great fan base. It's just been a one punch in the nuts after another with this terrible season, so I'm happy for them. But I really am so upset that they have the first overall pick, really just for the front office, for the satisfaction of Nico Harrison. I mean, I think everybody has the same feeling on this, where it's like they're happy for Mavericks fans and we're all upset that Nico just gets like a get out of jail free card for the disastrous last 6 months that guy has had. So if you're a Mavericks fan, like, you guys all really hate Nico, right? Like, are you glad you have the number one overall pick? Because realistically now, with how well the team is set up, it's going to be a lot harder to fire that guy. It's just way less likely that the team just goes out and wins like 40 games or less next year and has a nightmare season, and then you have a reason to get rid of him. Now, I just feel like they're almost too good. And now you have this extended timeline where he can start planning for the future again and stuff like that. So I just don't know if it's worth it. I mean, Cooper Flag's going to be really awesome, and it's kind of a joking question, but is getting this guy, getting the number one pick, is that worth it to have that fuckface as your GM for the next however many years? Like, is it worth it for Nico to basically get a free contract extension out of this? That's what I want to know. Having that jerk on the sidelines for the next decade, is that worth it for what you guys just got in Cooper Flag? I don't know. You guys can let me know. If you're spiteful enough, I would believe you to say that, hey, I'd rather just, get the 12th overall pick, whatever. But if I know that we get the 12th overall pick and Nico is fired tomorrow, I'd sign up for that. I think there are some Mavericks fans in my life that would answer the question. So that's what I'll be asking to my Mavericks fans in my life over the next week or so. So congratulations to the Dallas Mavericks. That kind of does it for our lottery talk. So that's going to do it for this podcast today. Probably went a little bit longer on the lottery talk than what I had planned, but realistically, people in NBA media like talking about like the crazy events and stuff like this more so than they do the actual game. So I figured I'd have to fall into that lane and at least talk about the lottery, even though I just kind of want to go to bed after that Celtics game. But hopefully you guys found some shred of enjoyment. Hopefully this made you feel a little bit better if you're a Celtics fan. I will be back soon. I will continue this podcast for at least the remainder of this season, regardless of what happens to my Boston Celtics. So you can expect an episode from me within the next week. Before I let you go, be sure to follow Outwards with Wallace on everything. That includes Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcasts. And I will talk to you guys next week. Peace.